superstar level player, but they're cool.
Yeah. Speaking of Cal Raleigh, who do you think will win the MVP, Cal Raleigh or Judge?
I think Aaron Judge will win it. And personally, I think I would vote for Aaron Judge. Just you look at the body of work, and it's amazing to see a guy hit over 50 home runs and still lead the league in hitting. But I find more and more these days that MVP voters are looking for new narratives. Like we've never seen a catcher hit this many home runs. We've never seen a switch hitter hit this many home runs, let alone for a Seattle team that's been starving for postseason berth for, 2 decades. So like that might play a factor. And certainly it's a tough call. I love what Cal Raleigh's done. I think it would be great if he won MVP, but Aaron Judge is just so good. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to shove that aside just because we have this new shiny object over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's an incredible race right now.
Yeah, definitely.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I have an interview with Steve Zinsmeister of the Diamondbacks. Thank you for sitting down with me.
What's up, Isaac? Good to see you again, man.
You too. So I think if you're correct, you have three players to throw my way, and I have three to throw your way.
Yeah, your little statistic game that we play with each other, huh?
Yep.
So three pitching stats. I've got pitching, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let me throw this your way and let's see if you can guess who some of these players are. So, Baseball Savant has a statistic called run value. Basically, it just tells you how good a pitcher is at throwing specific types of pitches, fastballs, curveballs, off speed, stuff like that. According to Baseball Savant, the best pitch in Major League Baseball is Tarek Skubal's changeup, which we're going to get another good look at here in Game 5 of the ALDS. The second best pitch in baseball belongs to an Arizona Diamondback. Can you name that Diamondback and the pitch that he throws?
This one is actually really fascinating to me because I saw this on Instagram the other day. Ryan Nelson's fastball.
Yeah, Ryan Nelson's four-seam fastball, second best pitch in the game, tied with Paul Skeen's four-seam fastball, and we know how good that guy is. And then also Chris Sale's slider, and he's been doing it for, 15 years or whatever it is. So pretty crazy. I mean, Ryan Nelson, obviously, I'm interested to see him take a step up in the rotation this next coming year. But that fastball, man, and you pair it with the cutter that he throws, his secondary stuff
Yeah.
has gotten better. But to say that he has the second best pitch in baseball up on a list with those guys who have either won a Cy Young or are going to this year, pretty crazy.
That's elite company.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, all three of those other guys, Chris Sale won the Cy Young last year and in the past. Skeens and Scooble are going to win it this year, and
Yep.
Ryan Nelson's right there in the middle of them.
I saw something when Screwball started game one of the wild card series. Did you know the Diamondbacks drafted him?
Yeah, they drafted him much later in the draft.
Yeah.
He's a Kingman, Arizona guy, so he grew up in kind of rural Arizona. But I believe he only had the one offer to go to Seattle to play in college, and obviously things worked out pretty well from there. But yeah, there's a handful of guys in the postseason that either were Diamondbacks or they drafted, like Yoan Duran, the closer for the
Yeah.
Phillies, was in the Diamondbacks minor league system. Anthony Bonda was pitching for the Dodgers last night. He was a Diamondback at one point. Chad Patrick for the Brewers. So
Tyler Holton.
it's cool to watch those guys have the success later on in their careers. It also is a little bit bittersweet to think about what could have been.
Yeah, a couple of those guys too, they came up in like the 2020, the 2021s where the team wasn't like doing that well and they gave them a shot and they didn't perform up to their standard, so they either traded them or released them and now they're contributing on playoff teams.
Yeah, I mean, Bonda was their top pitching prospect at a time when their system wasn't all that well regarded. So that ended up ending that relationship. Obviously, Chad Patrick was a part of a trade. Yoan Duran was a part of the Eduardo Escobar trade, which I think worked out pretty well for the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
Escobar was a good player. It's just he was a good player on a team that maybe wasn't quite as good.
Yep. All right, you ready for one stat from me?
All right, let's hear it.
There was one Diamondback who had an OPS in the 300s this season.
Ooh, that's not all that good, is it?
I'll give you a hint. He played less than 15 games.
Less than 15 games? How am I supposed to remember that then? A Diamondback who had an OPS 300. I don't know. I would guess it's somebody who went up and down. Tristan English?
Nope.
Okay.
That's a pretty good guess though. Same
Yeah,
comes
I think
out
you
of the
got me on
infield.
this one. Who is it?
Connor Kaiser.
Connor Kaiser.
Oh, is it
Um,
Kaiser?
Yeah, Connor Kaiser. He's a good guy. He finished the year with the team, by the way,
Yeah.
which is pretty impressive. And it was nice to get the chance to know him a little bit. He came out and did the pregame show with me one day, and nice guy. Went to Vanderbilt. His college coach said that he was one of his favorite players he's ever coached, and this is the coach
Wow.
at Vanderbilt. I mean, they have
There's a
great players coming
yeah.
through all the time, and super reliable fielder. The bat just hasn't really caught up yet at the major league level. I'm hoping for good things out of Connor Kaiser in the future.
He could for sure do it.
Yeah, no, I like him in the field for sure. And he spelled Ketel Marte there at the end of the season a couple of
Yeah.
times. Perdomo played almost every game at shortstop, so he didn't really have to play that position.
Yep. You want to throw one more my way?
Yeah, so here's my second stat. Only one relief pitcher threw more than 50 innings this season for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And it's maybe not the person you would have expected back in spring training. Who
Is
was it?
he is he still on the team?
Technically, no. Sort of, but technically, no.
Hmm. Kevin Ginkel had that shoulder injury, so it wasn't him.
Nope, not Kevin Ginkel. He spent a lot of time on the IL this season.
Yeah, and then he struggled a little bit, got sent down. Um, J Mart, no, right?
J Mart only threw about 15 innings before he blew out his elbow.
AJ Puck was too early.
Yep.
Jordan Montgomery, no. Oh,
Yeah.
did Ryan Nelson have 50 innings out of the bullpen?
Ryan didn't get to 50. No, there's another name, and he signed the day before the season started.
Shelby Miller.
No. Shelby Miller was traded to Milwaukee midseason, so he did not get to 50.
Wow. I think you have me stumped.
Jalen Beeks signed on with the Diamondbacks the day before the season started and ended up playing a huge role for this bullpen, which went through a lot of names. I mean, they set a franchise record for the most players they've ever had with a save. Jalen Beeks threw the most outings. He had, what was it? I think he had 57 and a third innings. He had 61 appearances, which was the most as a Diamondback. Turns out his best ability for them this year was just being available.
Yeah, that's actually insane though that we only had one.
Yeah, it's the only one. 57 and a third. Nobody else got to 50.
Wow. He was incredible for us for a long time there too.
Yeah, no, he was really good. I think mid-year, you and I talked about how he had only given up, I think it was one run on the road.
Yep.
So he finished the year with some pretty different splits, but I think that ultimately he served the purpose. I mean, if you consider a guy who signed on the day before the season started, whose first conversation with the manager happened on opening day when he was on
Yeah.
the mound, I mean, that's pretty good results out of a guy that you picked up off the street.
Yeah. All right. Besides Corbin Carroll, who led the Arizona Diamondbacks in stolen bases?
Ooh,
Do you want the number?
yeah. What's the number?
27.
27 stolen bases. So Geraldo Perdomo's pretty good at swiping bags. Is it Domo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not the fastest guy, right? But
He's
he's
just a
very
smart.
savvy on the
Yeah.
bases.
Perdomo had an incredible year, 20 homers. He reached the 100 RBIs for shortstop to do that. He almost had 27 or almost 30 stolen bases, 20 doubles. He had three or four triples.
Yeah. I mean, it's the best offensive season by a Diamondback shortstop ever.
Yeah.
And I mean, they've had a couple of good shortstops in their day, and I think he might be the most well-rounded and certainly has the highest upside of any of them. And I figure we're probably going to be talking about him a lot this offseason heading into 26.
And the smart thing that Hazen did, they locked him up for dirt cheap looking at the end of this year.
Yeah, that contract extension in spring. I mean, at the time, it wasn't odd to me or surprised me or anything like that, but there were legitimate questions about the future of the position because
Yeah.
Jordan Lawler was a top 10 prospect in the game of baseball, played shortstop. Perdomo, while a good player and a good leader, and certainly a good player already in the majors, he was their 9-hole hitter. And, there was talks about, are they going to move him off the position or where does Lawler fit in this equation? That contract extension told me everything I needed to know about how the Diamondbacks front office and coaching staff feel about Perdomo. And then he reciprocated by matching his level of leadership with the production this year. And that's really cool to see.
Yeah, he needs to get national attention though, I think, because I kind of feel like only Diamondbacks fans and coaches are noticing what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to start to see that here. I mean, he led all of National League position players in WAR, other than
Yeah,
Shohei Ohtani, who also has pitching on his side. So take that away, and Domo was the most valuable player in the National League this year.
yeah,
I don't know that he'll win MVP. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen, but because of that Ohtani guy I just mentioned. But he deserves a little bit of credit, and I wouldn't be shocked if he gets a few votes.
yeah, for sure. You want to throw me your last one?
Yeah, despite the Diamondbacks starting pitching struggles this season, the D-backs had 68 quality starts, which is the sixth
Wow.
most in Major League Baseball. Which pitcher had the most quality starts for the Diamondbacks in 2025?
Ryan Nelson?
You would think, right? It's not Ryan Nelson.
It wasn't Gallon, right? He turned it on too late.
Zach Gallen had 15 quality starts in 33 total starts, the
Wow.
most by an Arizona Diamondback. Now, maybe that would be different if Corbin Burns hadn't have gotten hurt. He had 7 of his 11 starts were quality, so he had the highest percentage. Merrill Kelly had a good percentage as well, but he got traded to Texas
Yeah.
midseason. So yeah, Zach Gallen ends up being the guy in leading the team in quality starts, which was actually something they did pretty well throughout the year.
Yeah, the pitching, even though it didn't look great at times, they had a couple really good guys.
I think you're right. I mean, definitely they had a couple of good arms in the end. Gallen turned his season around. A lot of those quality starts we just talked about came in August or September
Yeah,
after the
right.
trade deadline. And so credit to him. He really turned things around.
Do you think he took it personally when like teams Hazen said they were offering him double A guys for him instead of major league prospects like they got for Kelly, Grichuk?
I don't know if he took it personally, but I think you definitely look around the room, right? And you realize that all of these other guys, Merrill Kelly, who was basically his best friend and been there all along together throughout the system. He's now gone.
Yeah,
Gino's now gone. Naylor's gone. Grichuk is a 10-year guy. He's gone. Like, I think he looked around the room and kind of gauged the temperature and realized, oh, okay, like this is where we're at. Not that
yeah,
it was rock bottom per se, but they were just coming off of a 1-8, 1-9 stretch, whatever it was, right before the deadline. And I think you combine the way the team was playing, the way Gallen was pitching, and then the atmosphere of trading away all those players. And I think that something clicked for Gallen like, oh, okay, this is where I have to turn it on because I've got 2 months to figure out what my season is going to look like and how it's going to be remembered. I, for one, am really glad that we're going to be able to look back at those last 2 months positively because Zach
yeah.
Gallen, if in fact, if he's done being a Diamondback, I want to remember him as one of the best of all time in franchise history.
He for
If
sure
he had
was.
if he had continued to pitch poorly in those final 2 months, we probably look back at his time as a Diamondback unfairly because of the way that it ended. Fortunately, we don't have to do that.
Yeah, we'll get into his free agency later, but I hope he stays.
Yeah, we'll see if that's a possibility.
All right, you ready for my last stat?
Yeah, let's hear it.
This player had 7 homers with a 706 OPS, 28 RBIs, and 22 walks.
7 home runs.
Yep,
I want to say Tim Tawa had 8 or 9 home runs. So it's
Paul
not,
had 8.
yeah, so it's not Tim Tawa. 7 home runs. Alec Thomas was probably around seven.
He had 9, surprisingly.
He had nine. Okay. Jake McCarthy didn't get to seven, I don't
I
think.
think he had like 3 or 4, something like that.
It's not Randall. He got traded. Um, 7 home runs. Man, I think you got me again here. I mean, is it Blaze Alexander?
It is Blaze.
Okay. Yeah, it's just based on how much time he spent in the major
Yeah,
league, which it feels almost like Blaze has been around all year. The way that his energy has been present in the clubhouse over the last 2+ months of the season, plus the fact that he started 2024 on the major league roster. It just feels like he's been around forever, but you forget that he spent a lot of time injured at the beginning of the year.
yeah. Did he have a hamstring injury in spring training?
It was an oblique injury, actually. I remember that specifically because I was there on the backfields while a game was happening, and he came out of the locker room and he was walking to his car, and I was standing right there, and I stopped him to talk to him. And we talked for a solid like 10, 20 minutes about a lot of things, including the possibility of him playing the outfield. Because if you remember in spring training, right at the end there, they started giving him reps in the
Yeah,
outfield Only in practice. I don't even think he did it in a game in spring. And he and I talked about how when he was a kid, he used to watch highlights on YouTube of guys like Vlad Guerrero or Ichiro in right field, gunning guys down from, basically the warning track to third base. And how his big arm, he always saw it playing really well in the outfield. And then lo and behold, we get to what was it, early September or maybe late August, where they tried him in the outfield for like 4 days, and he
Yeah.
made probably two of the biggest plays of the entire season in the outfield. So yeah, oblique injury that kept him out for a little while, but I'm glad that he finally made the call up.
Yeah, he had those like incredible catch that he kind of dove over that unfortunately ended Lourdes' season. And then against the Red Sox, he robbed a homer, threw a guy out at the plate. He was electric.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Three of the biggest plays of the season, and I forgot about the Lourdes one, which I certainly don't pin on Blaze, but it was an amazing play that he
Yeah.
made. Unfortunately, he didn't get the chance to celebrate it all that long because of the way that Lourdes went down.
I was watching that game next to my dad, and he kind of summed it up the best. Unfortunately, he said the most Diamondbacks thing ever this year. Blaze makes an incredible catch, top 10 on Sports Center, and then Lourdes is done.
Yeah, it was a horrible moment to watch, because I was watching it from the radio booth and basically the press box area. And so you can kind of see both things happening at the same time, right? Blaze catching the ball going this way and Lourdes unfortunately falling on a non-contact or what appeared to be non-contact injury at the time. And turns out it was. And to see Blaze, because he goes sliding on his stomach, he has no idea what happened behind him.
Yeah.
And so he started running into the dugout, kind of celebrating. And I think it was Perdomo was pointing back at the warning track and like, no, something's going on back there. It was kind of heartbreaking for not just Lourdes, obviously, because we kind of knew what that meant, but it was also heartbreaking for Blaze because such a great moment kind of deflated instantly because of what happened.
Yeah, the way the TV broadcast had it, I think they showed Blaze running in, and then they didn't show Perdomo, but Blaze looked over his shoulder, and then at that moment, they panned to Lourdes.
Yeah, that was because of Domo. I mean, normally the outfielder, after making a play like that, would throw the ball into the infield.
Yeah.
I think when he went to do that, Perdomo was walking, or I forget exactly what happened, but he was kind of pointing back. And I think that's when Blaze looked back and was like, What's going on? And I think he understood pretty quickly.
Yeah, we all felt bad for Lourdes too.
Yeah, how can you not? I mean, that's an injury that's going to keep him out for a good chunk of next season as well. And that's going to affect the Diamondbacks' plans moving forward, I would think.
Yep. So now we're gonna go position by position, players that played that position, and I want you to tell me if you expected this production or you didn't get as much as you thought, or what you think about them playing.
Okay.
So starting with first base, he ended up getting traded away, but Josh Naylor, who had 20 homers, 92 RBIs, and OPS at 816.
Yeah, Naylor was great when he was here
Yeah,
with the Diamondbacks. Defensively, they knew that nobody was going to live up to the standard of Christian Walker. So Naylor was just fine in that regard. Offensively, the biggest moment that I'll remember from the season is unfortunately the game where Justin Martinez blew out his
the Grand
elbow.
Slam.
The Diamondbacks gave up 4 runs to the Mariners to send it to extras. And then all Naylor needed to do with the bases loaded was draw a walk, get a base hit. He could even get hit by a pitch, but instead he hit a walk-off grand slam, and that was a pretty cool moment. So I'll always take that with me. I know that obviously it didn't end up the way that everybody wanted, including Naylor. I think he would have preferred to have stayed with the Diamondbacks, although he's certainly in a good position now with Seattle to finish out this season before he hits free agency. I thought he was good with the Diamondbacks. I don't know if the production was better or worse than I expected. I think maybe I might have expected a little more power. He
Yeah,
didn't hit most of those home runs. I feel like he didn't hit with the Diamondbacks, or at least not at the rate that he did in his Cleveland days. But he's a guy who hit nearly 300. I think, for all intents and purposes, he was the Diamondbacks' best contact hitter
yeah.
outside of maybe Geraldo Perdomo during his time with Arizona. So, yeah, good stuff out of Josh Naylor for sure. I'm interested to see what the Diamondbacks have moving forward at first base.
Yeah, I think we all unfortunately remember that game where J Mart blew out his elbow, and then it was in the 10th, I think, or 11th. Naylor walked up with the bases loaded and crushed it.
Yeah, it was a great moment. One of my favorite moments from the season, and then getting the chance to interview him on the field after that was pretty cool. Even though he was pretty even keeled and
Yeah,
calm and collected, and Perdomo's throwing water on him while we're interviewing him. And I remember I asked him, I was like, "You don't love the moment, do you? You don't love the attention?" And he was like, "Man, I just want to do my job and then get the win and then go home to my wife." And I was like, Cool, man. Hard
Yeah.
not to argue with that. So, I mean, I respect the heck out of Josh Naylor and what he was able to do for the Diamondbacks.
They also had Tim Thaler there, who had 7 homers, a 620 OPS with 8 stolen bases. What did you think about Thaler at first?
I think Tawa, I mean, first of all, he only played first base a little bit at the end of the year
Yeah.
because they lost all their other options. Pavin Smith was injured, Tyler
Locklear.
Locklear was injured. Vargas was also kind of spelling over there at first base a little bit too. So this isn't necessarily a position I expect Tim Tawa to play a ton of moving forward, but he's your super utility guy. He could play
Yeah.
literally anywhere in the infield, although I don't know that we've seen him at shortstop. He could play anywhere you want him in the outfield. He's super athletic. The speed is a little deceptive. He's not a speedster like a Jake McCarthy or Corbin Carroll, don't get me wrong, but I think he's very athletic and can play center field. And how many guys around the league do you know that can play center field and first base? There's not a
Yeah.
ton of them. So that versatility alone, I think, is worth it for Tim Tawa. And if he's going to be on this team in 2026, that'll be the reason why, because he can play a lot of positions.
Cool. What about Tyler Locklear? So the thing with Locklear is he only had 3 homers, a 529 OPS. He struggled out of the gate, but right before that throw ended his season, he kind of flipped a page and he was kind of mashing for a little there.
Yeah, he's certainly got a ton of raw power. I mean, there were a couple, at least one, maybe two of those three home runs were swings on pitches that you don't normally see home runs go for. I think if he makes more contact moving forward, I think his natural raw talent and raw power will just take over. So I want to see him not try to hit home runs, but try to be a little bit more contact oriented in his swing. He did have some swing and miss, especially on like sliders low and away and guys pitching him out of the zone. So if he can be a little more selective, I think that could help him. Defensively, I thought he was great at first base. And I mean, again, nobody's going to be Christian Walker, so I don't expect that of anybody. But I thought he was really, really good. Probably the best defensive first baseman that this team has in their system. And so for that reason alone, I expect him to get more run at first base next year. Now, he did just have surgery
Yeah.
or is having surgery on his shoulder and elbow. So as far as a timetable for that, it looks like maybe late spring he could be back, if not early in the season, in which case maybe we see him a month or a couple of weeks into the regular season.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question for you. How long do you think he'll be out and like will he have a spring training to get used to pitching again?
Yeah, I mean it all depends on when he comes back and is actually game ready, right? So like if that happens to be with a couple weeks left in spring, great. Then maybe he could be ready in the first couple weeks of the regular season. But if he doesn't show up ready to practice until, a week into the regular season, then we probably won't see him until at least April. Well, I guess I should say May, the second month of the season. So I don't have a specific timetable. I don't think anybody does at this point. I mean, often when these surgeries happen, whether it's elbows or shoulders or whatever, knee injuries like Lourdes, you don't know a timetable until you get
Yeah.
much, much closer and you determine how a guy is feeling because I have no idea how his body is going to react.
Do they know what caused the injury? Was it the Lawler throw?
I don't remember who threw the ball. Maybe it was Lawler, but it was a collision in the base path with a runner when he had to step up the line a little bit to receive a throw. I forget if that was Lawler or not, but you could probably correct me on that. And I don't remember the specific runner either, but I remember the play pretty vividly. And I think he even
Yeah.
stayed in the game at least temporarily, but ultimately they got a lot of opinions from a couple different doctors. They waited several weeks to see some of the best medical professionals in the business. And this was their diagnosis. So he's going to have surgery if he hasn't already. I'm not sure exactly when the date was on those, on both the elbow and the shoulder. So that's a lot to overcome.
Yeah. Hopefully he recovers fast.
Yeah.
And then at second base we had Ketel Marte, 28 homers, an OPS of 893 with an OPS plus of 145. I mean, Ketel is just ridiculous.
What's not to love, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he's still the best second baseman in the game. I think both offensively and defensively, I think he's still at an elite level. And keep in mind, those stats are with him missing about a month of the
Yeah.
season early on. So, pretty remarkable when you count up the counting stats to think that he missed all those games towards the beginning and still got to that level, still made the all-star team and like all those things. So, really cool to see that out of Cattell.
Yeah, Catel's incredible. And then when Cattell missed a month, and then later on in the season, then Ilomaro Vargas fill in for him. Vargas, his stats don't show incredibleness, but I feel like he just did a job. He filled in for a superstar that you're not going to fill up to with three homers, and OPS plus of 86.
Yeah, and remember too, Vargas came up earlier in the summer and almost, I don't want to say immediately, but very quickly broke his foot. I think it was a
Yeah,
toe injury or maybe it was a bone in his foot.
against the White Sox.
And that was the injury that sparked the call up of Blaze Alexander because I remember sitting in the dugout and talking with Blaze about, hey, it's great that you're here and you get this opportunity. But I also know how much you love Ildemaro Vargas as a teammate. They were both in AAA together to start the year and as this veteran presence. So, like, we had that conversation too. It was a little bittersweet, but I was glad that Vargas got back on his feet, literally, and that he was able to perform at the level he did toward the end of the year. That's a veteran guy as a backup presence in your infield. And for him to be able to step in and play first base, I mean, regardless of the level at which he played it, which I thought he was serviceable, he's not a first baseman. He's a
Yeah.
second baseman, shortstop, third base type, but he was willing to do whatever was best for the team.
And then, like you mentioned, when Vargas and Cato both got hurt, they called up Blaze, which we'll get more into in a second. But I thought Blaze was incredible everywhere they put him.
Yeah, I definitely think that. I'm interested to see where he lands heading into the 26th season, which I'm sure we'll get to in a moment. But yeah, he's a ball of energy. He's one of the best dudes that I've had the chance to meet in baseball, and that's saying something because they got a lot of great guys in the clubhouse, and Blaze is certainly one of them.
I do know Blaze is enjoying his off season though, because my best friend he just played in MLB The Show.
There you go. How can you not love that, right?
Yep, my friend got cooked. He said,
Some of these guys, you'd be surprised how good they are on the controller. And some of them play in the clubhouse, but I know there's a handful of guys. I think Lourdes Gurriel is one of the bigger MLB The Show players, is what I've heard.
"Really
Yeah.
cool." So at shortstop, we had one guy pretty much the whole year. Perdomo played 161 or 160 games. He only missed one or two. 20 homers, an OPS of 851, an OPS plus of 136 with a WAR of 7.
Yeah, I mean, I said it earlier. It's the best season that a Diamondback shortstop has ever had. He's going to get MVP consideration. He's not going to win it, I don't think. But I think what you talked about, the fact that he played in 161 games, I think 160 of them were starts. He wanted to play every day, regardless of how he was feeling. And he played through some I don't want to call them injuries, but some bumps and bruises for sure. He had a
And
contusion on a bone in his hand that he played through for several months. I think there were some lower body things going on there at the end too. And for him to tough it out and play every single day, it's something that I heard him talk about with Mookie Betts on his podcast a couple of weeks back. And Mookie had asked him about playing with Gino and what's something you took away from Gino. And he said, well, Gino taught me that I should play every day, that I should be out there every chance I can to give my team the best odds at winning that day. And that matters to him. And that's coming from a guy who just got paid. I mean, not
yeah,
everybody reacts that way when they get that contract. Sometimes they rest on their laurels. They think, okay, I got my money. I'm good. Not Geraldo. I think he took it as a responsibility upon himself. Like, okay, now that I'm paid like the leader of this team, I'm absolutely going to be that on the field for my guys every single day. And he's the heartbeat of the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think when people think of the D-backs, for the last couple of years, they've thought of Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte. I think we're going to add one more to the trio here this year.
yeah, that's the also thing I love about Perdomo. Like, he's such a good leader on the field and off the field. Like, the Diamondbacks mic'd him up for a game. I watched that video. He was always talking, just having a blast.
Yeah, he's one of the best dudes. I mean, he's good for a great quote. I love grabbing him after a win on the field and talking with him because he's really good at kind of giving you the vibe of what's going on around the team. He's not afraid to say stuff that's going on behind the scenes. He stands up for his teammates, which is a great quality to have as well. He's always had the leadership qualities. I think now his play on the field just kind of matches that a little bit better. And the rest of the league, like you said, is going to take notice of that.
Yeah, the crazy thing about me with Perdomo too is like he did not grow up in America. He did not speak English, and I watched an interview a couple weeks ago. Someone asked him how he got so good at English, and he just said he listened to songs.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of it for a lot of people. Watching TV shows,
Yeah,
listening to music. Yeah, that's a huge part of it for sure. It's been really interesting to watch him this year. I didn't realize, and maybe this was my own ignorance, but I didn't realize that he was best friends with Jose Ramirez
I
of
didn't
the
realize that either.
Guardians. Yeah, so I found that out during the season at some point, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about it too, right? Like not just their upbringing and things like that, but two guys who play for somewhat medium to small market teams. I realize Phoenix is a bigger city, but in terms of market size in baseball, and guys who are switch hitters and infielders, like there's a lot of similarities to them. They're both kind of the emotional heartbeat of their clubs. Although Jose Ramirez is far and away the best player on his team,
Yeah,
Geraldo has an argument for that, certainly after the season he put together. But you still got Cattell, you still got Corbin. So that's an interesting part of his game as well that I think he's really developed is, I asked him, what are some of the things that Jose Ramirez does that you would like to add to your game? And he said, well, I think there's a few things that I do that he'd like to add to his. And I thought
it's
that was a good
awesome.
answer.
Yeah, Jose Ramirez is a stud too.
Yeah, one of the best in the sport.
Yeah. Now on to third base. So we have Jordan Lawler, who again, like Tall or Locklear, his stats don't look amazing. He had an OPS of 545, but he went 0 for 31 to start the season, I think. And then when they recalled him up, he figured out how to hit again and realized he can compete with anyone, and it kind of switched it. He was hitting extra base hits, line drives.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of figured eventually the talent would show up at the major league level because he's
Yeah,
just so good. Top 10 prospects in the game of baseball just don't come around all that often. The D-backs have had a few over the years. Corbin Carroll, Gabby Moreno, although they traded for him when he was kind of already graduating to the big leagues. But like guys like that don't come around. And
yeah,
so we kind of figured at some point he was going to turn it on at the big league level. It was just a matter of when. And those first two call ups, the one in September of 23, he didn't really get much of a run back then. And then
yeah.
they made the playoffs, so he didn't really play much. And then the beginning of this season, missed most of last year with injuries, and he's had a lot of injuries in his career. I'm really intrigued to see where he lands position wise, but also in this lineup moving forward because he has the potential to make a splash in your lineup the way that Corbin Carroll did when he got called up in 22. And even though it's a different path and it's taken a couple of tries with Lawler, he does have that talent. He's got crazy speed. We think, if you look at what he was able to do in the middle infield in particular, defensively, he's got crazy athleticism. I think he could still potentially play some third base. We could talk about that. But I think that his athleticism is going to take him, sky is the limit for Jordan Lawler. He just got a slow start offensively.
That was the one thing that kind of surprised me a little bit. In his first two call-ups, he kind of struggled at the plate, but his defense was always there. In this call-up, I feel like he mashed at the plate, and his defense it wasn't terrible, but it was worse than the first two call-ups.
Yeah, I mean, at the end there too, he's playing some third base, and
Yeah,
fortunately, he had, I think it was 4 errors in the span of 2 games back to back. And that's just kind of a red flag, especially at the end of the season when the Diamondbacks all of a sudden had expectations of winning all of a sudden thrown back
yeah,
on them. So I think he was a little bit victim of the situation. Otherwise, if they were completely out of it the way they were back at the trade deadline, they might have just rolled with him at third base and played through some of the rookie mistakes. We'll see where they play him defensively moving forward. But I think we saw, especially in that first call up when he wasn't hitting, he was fielding really well at
yeah.
second base and at shortstop. So I'm interested to see what he can put together.
And then again, we had Blaze, who was electric on defense, hit a little bit. Blaze has been incredible.
Yeah, and my favorite thing about Blaze is the arm. The arm plays well over at third base. It obviously plays well in the outfield too, which we saw when he gunned down a runner at home plate. So I think he profiles pretty well at the hot corner. I'm interested to see how the bat looks over a larger sample size and kind of an everyday role for Blaze. Because I think when they called him up, the anticipation was into the future, he would be your super utility guy. He could play second base on a day when Cattell either DHs or gets the day off. He could play some shortstop if Domo needed a day. He could play third anytime you want. He could maybe even play a little bit of outfield. Like, I think that was the role they had in mind for him. But then because of the way that Lawler played at third and the way that Blaze played at third, where he was very impressive, they might just roll with him at third base, and he might be the starting third baseman for the Diamondbacks on opening day in 26.
Wow. And then we had Gino, who we traded away at the trade deadline. 49 homers, 118 RBIs, and OPS 824. Gino just mashes.
Yeah, and it's interesting to go back and look at those stats and see how much of it was actually in Arizona
Yeah,
versus in Seattle. Now, I realize the trade deadline is not exactly halfway through the season. So he played more or less 4 months in Arizona and two in Seattle. But still, if you look at the rate stats, he did not hit all that well in Seattle at the tail end of the year. It's incredible to look back and think, he hit more home runs with the Diamondbacks before he was traded than any other Diamondback hit in total this season. He also had more RBIs than most of the guys finished the year with. So, yeah, Gino was having an unbelievable season. If he had stayed in Arizona and kept hitting at a reasonable rate, he might have put up one of the best offensive seasons that we've ever seen. I mean, he was on pace to be up there with guys like Matt Williams
yeah.
and Luis Gonzalez in some really crazy categories offensively.
I don't know, like, if it was just because it was a small sample size, like you said, he's hitting in the postseason. But I feel like if you look at Gino's like stats, he hits better. This makes sense, but in the stadiums that like the ball flies, like Cincinnati, Chase Field, and then if you go look at his like Seattle numbers, he's still good, but it's not incredible power numbers.
Yeah, I don't know what the issue seemed to be. I mean, he regressed a little bit to kind of, what we had seen in those first 2 months of 24 when he kind of struggled out of the gate for the Diamondbacks, but there's a 12-month stretch there from I guess the start of June in 24 to when he got traded at the end, midway in July or end of July in 25. Like those 12, 13 months, whatever it is, that's an incredible stretch for the
Yeah.
Diamondbacks and maybe one of the best 12 to 13 month stretches of any Diamondback in history. So they certainly got what they paid for in Gino over the course of a year and a half, essentially, to play third base.
At one point, right before they traded him, it was like 4 days in a row of two homers in one game.
Yeah. I'll always remember the four homer game that he
Yeah.
had against the Braves at
Yeah.
Chase Field. He hit the third one, and I remember I was going down on the field to potentially go out and interview, presumably to interview Gino after he hit the fourth. And I remember standing next to the dugout, watching him go to the plate for the fourth time. And I looked to my right, and there was a kid and his dad, both Braves fans. And the kid looks up at his dad and says, "I hope he hits another one."
Wow.
And his dad was like, "Yeah, I do too." And to see that from a visiting team, their fans, just to want to witness a moment like that and then for it to come to fruition and to happen, it was really cool for Gino, but also for his teammates. I know that they didn't win the game, and that's a big disappointment. Don't get me wrong, but that was still a really cool moment that I look back on from this year.
Yeah. Are you good if I send you one more link?
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you.
You bet. We back.
Yep.
All right.
So yeah, Gino was he was incredible.
Yeah, one of the best seasons a Diamondback has ever had offensively, and I'm glad I got the chance to see Gino as a Diamondback over the past 2 years because, third base was a troublesome spot for them back when they were trying to win a World Series in 23. Obviously, Evan Longoria had his moments, but that was a spot they wanted to shore up, and he did a great job over the
For
last year.
sure. And then in right field, they had Corbin Carroll. He had a 5.8 WAR, 31 homers, 32 stolen bases, an OPS of 883, an OPS plus of 140. The first 30-30 season in Diamondbacks history. He was the first player ever with 15 triples, 30 homers, 30 stolen bases, and 60 plus walks. He did this all too while missing a month.
Yeah, he did. And he probably came back a little earlier than maybe he
Yeah,
should have with that hairline fracture in his hand and or chip fracture in his hand, I should say. Yeah, and if you look at his season like this year compared to 23 when he was unanimously the rookie of the year, I think they're two different types of seasons. And when you look at them, like this year, there was clearly more pop. There were a lot more extra base hits. He led the league in triples for the third year in a row. He set the franchise record. He broke his own record for most triples in a season
in
by
the
a
same
Diamondback.
game.
Yeah, right, exactly. And on top of that, I think he was like third or fourth in extra base hits in all of baseball. He had 80 plus extra base hits, the homers, the doubles, all that stuff. But then on top of it, too, he somehow also found a way to take his arm, which was maybe not his strongest part of his game, and he turned it into an absolute strength, and he gunned down a
Mhm.
bunch of guys defensively. I talked with Dave McKay, the outfield coach, about how they brought in a pitching coach to help Corbin with his throwing last year, and how that's kind of advanced his game a little bit. And so he got better in a lot of areas. There was a bit of a trade-off, a little bit lower in the contact. So if you look at his batting average, it actually went down this year, but his slugging went up, and that was a conscious effort that he made. He made a lot of changes to his hitting stance this year with his hands kind of up
Mhm.
by his head a little bit more instead of back on his shoulder. And clearly, whatever he was doing intentionally, it worked because he put together another really awesome season.
That's the thing I love about Carroll. Like any weakness he has, he goes out and fixes it. Like his rookie year in 2023, there was nothing really negative about it. But like you said, his defense slumped. 2024, it got better. Or it never slumped, but it wasn't amazing. And then 2025, like he saved some games in a wild card hunt with his throws.
Yeah, I mean, there was one just in that last homestand where he threw out a
Yeah,
runner on the Dodgers, I believe it was,
Kim, I
in the
think.
10th inning. And if he doesn't do
Yeah,
that, they maybe don't even get a chance to win that game. I don't think they ended up winning it in the end, but I mean, those are moments that are career defining in some ways. Like I think with guys like Carroll too, sometimes, when you're that fast, when you're the fastest player basically in the entire league, you can cover a lot of ground in the
mhm.
outfield, and that makes you a good outfielder kind of by default. But there's so much more to it. And I think that he realizes that there's more to the throwing aspect, throwing through a cutoff man instead of over a cutoff man. That's a lesson that he's certainly learned over the last couple of years. And he's just gotten a lot better defensively and offensively. Like I said, it's just a different type of season, but it was clearly intentional by him. And so he's making adjustments to the league instead of just allowing the league to make adjustments to him.
Yeah, and then in center field they had Alec Thomas with 9 homers and OPS of 659. The thing with Alec is his defense never slumps. The one kind of issue with him, he's fast. He goes through stretches where you can't really get the guy out, lefty lefty. It doesn't matter. He rakes, and then those are about 3 weeks long, and he goes through like 2 months where he kind of struggles at the plate, and then that kind of evens out the numbers.
I'll say this about Alec. He was healthy for
Yeah,
2025, which is something that he hasn't been able to say in a while. 2024 kind of got derailed by hamstring issues. Even when he came back later in the season, he just kind of wasn't himself. And that gave Jake McCarthy a platform in 24 to stand out a little bit. The thing in 2025 is, Alec put together his best offensive season in terms of the counting stats, mostly because he was available the whole season. But I think by now we kind of know what he is and what he isn't. He is an elite defensive center fielder. I think that continues in 2025, even if some of the defensive metrics show that he took a small step back. But yeah, we're still waiting on some things about his offense to click. He's got one of the prettiest swings that I've
yeah.
ever seen. I mean, lefties can do that to you. They've got such sweet swings, and he's got
Ken
a
Griffey.
good. It's a good match for his leg kick. It's just timing it up that's been kind of a difficulty. And I think pitchers know that they can attack him low and inside, and he'll roll over some pitches. But when he's at his best, he's hitting the ball the opposite field and turning singles into doubles. And if he can go and do that, I have faith that he could be the starting center fielder again for the Diamondbacks moving forward.
That was again my next question. I would hate to see this, but do you still listen to Burns and Gambo by chance?
Yeah, I know those guys.
Yeah, you worked for them. So they were saying that like when the Cattell drama came out, we'll get to that in a second. The team needs pitching, so they were talking about the possibility of trading Alec Thomas and or Jake McCarthy. Do you think they'll do that in this offseason?
I think they're going to look at all options. Don't get me wrong, and that's not to say like yes or no. It just depends on what the market bears, right? I mean, if somebody comes along and offers you a starting pitcher with a couple controllable seasons, and part of that deal is you have to give up a center fielder, yeah, they might consider that based on their needs and based on what they have coming up through the system. I mean. I would say they probably have more depth coming in the outfield than they do in the starting pitching area.
The
Um, there's a
Barosas.
there's a couple of guys in AAA that are intriguing for the rotation, and we could talk about that as we move forward. But Jorge Barosa broke onto the scene this year. I think that there's potential that he could fill some sort of backup role moving forward, if not at the beginning of the season, certainly during. They've got other options coming down the pipeline. I mean, a little bit further down the road is a guy like Ryan Waldschmidt, who's more of a corner outfielder. Slade Caldwell, a first round pick just last year. He's a little further away, obviously, but they do have guys coming in the center field department. Drew Jones is still in the system. We'll see if in the next couple of years, if he can figure out some of the hitting aspects of his game. And in which case, yeah, maybe the Diamondbacks do reconsider what their outfield looks like. But for right now, I mean, you've got Alec, you've got Jake, and then we'll see if Jorge Barosa fits his way into that mix. And some of that depends on the availability of Lourdes Gurriel Jr.,
Yeah.
his knee injury, and what the Diamondbacks decide to do, whether they address that position, the corner outfield in the offseason, or if they just try to hold down the fort until Lourdes is back.
Yeah. And then in left field, they have Jake McCarthy, who again, I kind of feel like he's the same type of player as Alec Thomas, just speed guys, great defense. They go through stretches where they're incredible, and then other stretches where they can't, where they struggle in the plate. So, yeah,
Jake had a stretch in the middle of 24 in the summer where he was
he
on
was
fire.
ballistic.
He was getting multiple hits every day for like a 3 or 4 week stretch there. He was one of their best players, hitting against lefties, against righties. It didn't matter. He played all over the outfield. He played right, he played center, he played left. I think the thing that maybe is standing in his way of finding regular consistency is just not having the playing time. You know, they asked him to play sporadically towards the end of the season. He was sort of in a platoon with Jorge Barosa. And, you know, he's not going to play right field very much with Corbin Carroll being healthy, you know, knock on wood. And Alec Thomas is probably the better version of him, at least in center field when it comes to fielding the position. So he's kind of pigeonholed right now into that left field spot. But I'll say this, like I said about Lourdes earlier, if he's not available at the beginning of the season, which presumably he won't be, there might be an opportunity there for Jake to kind of take the reins a little bit and play with a little bit more regularity.
Yeah, and then they again had Lourdes out there, who season was cut short. But I really like Lourdes out there. He has power. He'll hit for contact. He does the smart plays in baseball, whether that's a guy at second, no outs, who gets something to the right side. And then when we got him from the Blue Jays, the talk was his defense wasn't great. But if you look at some of his highlights, he makes spectacular plays out there.
His month of August was maybe the best in all of
Yeah,
baseball. I think he had 32 RBIs. I think it ended up being. He was
you can.
pushing towards the record for Diamondback most RBIs in a month. Yeah, I mean, he goes through stretches like that where he's one of the best hitters on the planet. And then he also goes through stretches where he struggles. And you kind of have to weigh the good with the bad with Lourdes. And that goes for his fielding as well. I think he's got a good arm. He's always going to be one of the leaders on the team in outfield assists. So teams know not to run on him too much in left field. He's not the fastest. He's not going to cover the most ground, but he does make the spectacular plays. Sometimes they look a little goofy because he is kind of a taller, lanky kind of guy, but he is a good outfielder. He's an above average defensive outfielder because of that arm. And we'll see how this knee injury impacts his season, whether he's back, you know, sometime in the middle of the year or if it tends to be a little bit later. We don't know yet. But I'm interested to see how they hold down the fort in the meantime and what they decide to do with that position.
Yeah, and even in August, Lourdes was so good he could hit 105 out.
Yeah, he hit that home run off Mason Miller. I think it was 104, but I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
but still, I mean,
that's
come on.
ridiculous.
It was the hardest pitch ever hit for a home run in the StatCast era, which goes back to like 2013, I think. So, for all intents and purposes, let's just say it's the hardest thrown ball ever hit for a home run. And it was Lourdes, and he didn't hit it to right field. He wasn't late on that pitch. He was on time, maybe
Yeah,
even early to 104, which was really impressive. I talked with a lot of his teammates and with Torey Lovullo about it the next day, and they were just in awe because, I mean, even major league hitters, they see 104, and some guys can pick it up real easy, and other guys, they're just like in awe of that.
yeah. So let's say you yourself are given 20 at bats. How many hits do you think you're getting off 100?
Zero, zero, zero hits.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I would expect. That's so fast.
zero hits. I mean, I asked Torey Lovullo, who was a major league player in his
Yeah.
own day, right? And I asked him, I was like, when you watch a guy throw 104 or you know, even 100, right? Like a Justin Martinez or something like that. Like that's an unbelievable number, right? Like and it's just it's not natural to be able to throw
No.
a baseball that hard. That's why so many guys end up having arm surgeries, but um Yeah, that's the game of baseball now, Isaac, is guys are throwing that all over the place. Almost every team feels like they have at least one guy who throws 100.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys that throw gas out there right now, and I feel like the issue is like the 100 is a part of the problem, don't get me wrong, but these kids' arms are getting beat up at a young age. Like my club team, they're so good about arm care, but we were in the championship last week. Their pitcher threw 156 pitches against us, and
Oh.
my coach was like, "We would never do that," and people wonder why there's arm injuries in baseball.
No, no, yeah, that's a crazy number, especially at your age. But you're right about the epidemic of arms and injuries. I mean, some of these top doctors that we were talking about who perform these surgeries, they're so busy because they're not just doing, major league arms, they're not just doing minor league arms, they're doing high schoolers, they're doing kids who are teenagers still, and that's scary to think about. But yeah, when you talk about pitch limits, I mean, if you're ever watching a Diamondbacks game, and maybe you know this already because you're so dialed into it, but once you see a guy get to 90 in a start, that's when you start thinking, okay, this is probably his last
Everything
hitter
gets
or his
loose.
last inning. Like most teams won't go past that 100 number unless there's something significant happening. A no hitter and you're in the ninth, okay, maybe you stretch it. You got nobody in the bullpen for some reason. Okay, maybe you stretch it a little bit. But yeah, that 90 number is kind of when you start to think like, okay, this might be his last hitter.
Yeah, that, and then I've noticed in the playoffs, I remember this with the NLCS with the Phillies, they'll throw like 85 pitches and then come out 2 days later.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the playoffs, I mean, all that goes out the window, right?
Yeah.
Like, Tarek Skubal's going to pitch in game 5 because it's a do or die game for the Tigers, even if it is a little bit short rest. I'm not exactly sure how the days lined up there, but yeah, you throw everything out the window. Remember what the Diamondbacks did in 23? They basically went the entire postseason with just Gallen, Kelly, and Fott
Yeah.
throwing in their starts. Now they did
Bullpen
have,
games.
I think they had a couple bullpen games in there to kind of figure it out, but they basically told Ryan Nelson, "Hey, you're in the bullpen for now. Like we're gonna ride with what we got." It's all hands on deck when you get to the postseason, so some of those numbers change a bit.
Yeah. And then at catcher, we have Gabriel Moreno, 9 homers, an OPS of 786, an OPS plus of 117. So the thing is with Gabby, it wasn't his fault. I'm still mad that they were playing that game, but he took that pitch off the hand. All I want next year is Gabby with the full season healthy because he's so good when he plays, and the team is like a different team when he's on the field.
Yeah, two things to keep an eye on here as we figure out who the backup catcher is going to be in 26 is the fact that Gabby Moreno is asked to play 2 out of every 3 games. That's kind of Torey Lovello's philosophy on catching is 2 on, 1 off, meaning he's probably going to catch the night games and then the day game he'll usually get off. And that's where the backup catcher becomes important because some teams will ride or die with their starting catcher for, 80, 90% of the games. The Diamondbacks don't do that. And Gabby, to your point earlier, he hasn't been 100% healthy in his
Mhm.
3 years as the Diamondbacks catcher. So you do have to be cognizant of that. It wasn't his fault that he got hit on the hand in the rain in Cincinnati, which, by the way, is probably the number one game I look back at this season in frustration because of the umpires
Yep.
forcing them to play the inning number 6
And
in the
then Mene
rain.
got hurt.
Mena gets hurt. Moreno gets hurt. He misses 9 weeks of the season.
Was it
Um,
that long?
yeah, you go back and add it up. I mean, it was a long time. And
Wow.
so the importance of having Gabby healthy is monumental for the team. But I do look down the stretch at what happened with James McCann, where he was catching every Zach Gallen start and pretty much every Brandon Pfaadt start. So in the end, when they went to a 4-man rotation, those last 2 weeks of the season, McCann was catching as many games as Gabby was. And so I'm curious what they decide to do with the backup catcher spot. Do they just bring back James McCann, which I say just, that would be a huge
Yeah.
addition in my opinion, just based on how much they relied on James for game planning and using his awareness and his knowledge of opposing pitchers and opposing hitters to really formulate a lot of their game plans. He was huge. He was a big part of the reason why Zach Gallen turned his season around, a big part of the reason why Brandon Pfaadt found confidence in his cutter is because of James McCann. So do you bring that guy back no matter what that costs? I don't think it'll be a lot, but I mean, certainly a backup veteran catcher is more than, say, a guy you have stashed in the minor leagues. So I'm keeping a close eye on what they decide to do with their backstop situation.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question. Who will be the backup catcher next year?
I mean, my money would have to be on James McCann for now, just because of the familiarity, but you never know what's going to happen in free agency and what a guy's motivations are. On the one hand, I would think he would feel a lot of confidence in what he was able to achieve over the last couple months of this season in Arizona. So there might be a comfort level there that he's open to trying again. But also, too, is there a team out there that saw what he did in Arizona and says, "Ooh, we could really use that, and we're
Yeah.
a contending team. Maybe he wants to play for a contender or a team that he views as more of a contender than Arizona." And also, too, he's a Nashville guy. Does he want to be on the East Coast versus the West Coast? Like these are all factors that you have to consider with players in free agency. And could he get a 2-year major league deal with someone else where he might get a 1-year deal here or somewhere else? These are all factors that are going to be big players, big factors in his free agency this offseason. But he would still be my number one pick as for who's the backup because Jose Herrera just elected free agency.
Yeah. So now we're on to the starters. We don't have to go as in depth. Corbin Burns, 2.66 ERA, 64 innings, 63 strikeouts. He was like the ace of the Diamondbacks, which is what we signed him for. And then that national start kind of,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, he was everything that he was billed to be, and he was fantastic for 11 starts before he blew out his elbow. I'm intrigued by the fact that he says he's going to be back around the All-Star break next year. That's a
fast
little
recovery.
It's a little earlier than maybe expected, although the manager said the same thing a couple of weeks ago. So that timeline has been echoed throughout the organization. I believe that he can come back and be that guy, but what level is he pitching at when he returns? That's another thing to keep an eye on. I don't necessarily expect him to come out and start throwing 7, 8 innings right out of the chute. So let's see what Corbin provides next year. If nothing else, having him around the clubhouse these past couple of months, even though he's been injured, has been huge for young guys like Ryan Nelson
Lot.
and Brandon Fott. And so just having him as a resource alone is still a net positive for the Diamondbacks.
Yeah. And then Zach Gallen, like we said, he turned it on in the second half. 4.83 ERA, 192 innings, 175 strikeouts. Like if you look at his numbers, to be honest, I didn't think he put up that good of a season. Like 192 innings that helped the bullpen, 175 strikeouts, and he finished it with an ERA in the fours.
Yeah, and we talked about, he led the team with 15 quality starts. That's a little less than half of his starts. He went at least 6 innings with 3 or less earned runs. He had a couple of blow ups throughout the season, and that's really what inflated his numbers in those first 4 months. But I'm glad he finished strong. That's for sure. As for his future, he's a free agent. Scott Boras is his agent, so
Yeah.
he's going to be looking to get paid at age 30. This is, the first time he's really gotten a chance to test his value. So he has every reason to do so, and I hope the best for him. Whether that's with the Diamondbacks or not, I don't know. But they might have a couple of other options available to them. Who knows what happens in the future? But I think Gallen enjoyed his time with the Diamondbacks. I think that the organization certainly values him and what he's provided over the years. So a reunion is not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and then we had Ryan Nelson, 3.39 ERA, 154 innings with 132 strikeouts. To be honest, once Burns went down, he was kind of the ace of the staff.
Yeah, and going into 26, Ryan Nelson is your top dog. I mean,
Yeah,
assuming that you don't have Gallen or Kelly, who are both free agents. I know they traded Kelly, but I'm still going to throw him in that same category. Right now you have Nelson, Fott, and Erod. And Fott and Erod both had ERAs around 5 or higher throughout the course of the season, whereas Nelson's gotten better every year. He lowered his ERA by a full run in 2024, and then he wasn't even in the rotation to start this season in 25, but he works his way back in there, has another great summer, his second straight summer where he was the best pitcher on the staff. We talked about his four seam fastball being one of the best pitches in baseball. And now he's going to be the ace of the staff heading into 26, barring whatever they choose to do in free agency or the trade market. But I think it's entirely possible that we see Ryan Nelson on the mound on opening day in
wow.
2026.
And then we got Eduardo Rodriguez. He went through a stretch towards the end of the year where he was unhittable pretty much. Even with that stretch, his numbers don't look great. A 5.02 ERA and 167 strikeouts. Erod was pretty good this year.
There was a stretch in, I want to say it's August and September together where the team won 9 of his 10
Yeah.
starts in a row. And that's pretty remarkable to give your team that kind of an opportunity to win. And obviously, some of those were because he was great, and some of the other ones were because the offense was great. But regardless, when you win a start, I mean, that's a big deal. And he wasn't putting them in great position the past year and a half. And so for him to make that kind of turnaround in the second half of the season, that's huge because I know nobody wants to be great as much as Erod does. I mean, he's seen kind of the pinnacle before with winning the World Series with the Red Sox and then having a pretty good level of success in Detroit as well. They know this guy's a great pitcher. He just has to get to that level again. And I think he kind of sniffed that a little bit in August and September.
Yeah, and then they had Brandon Pfaadt, an ERA of 5.25 with 176.2 innings pitched. The issue that I thought with Pfaadt, which you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I feel like Pfaadt, the first time through the lineup was really good, striking guys out, and then the second time, it wasn't terrible, but he kind of labored. People saw more pitches. Then that third time, they were drawing walks, and he kind of got lit up.
Yeah, the thing that stands out to me is the splits between home and road.
Yeah.
He was great at Chase Field and just not on the road. I mean, basically double his ERA on the road. So even in my conversations with him about that, I mean, it's not something that he doesn't think about. You know, he's cognizant of it. He just doesn't exactly know why there's such a difference. He doesn't feel the difference between pitching at Chase Field and pitching somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is very relevant for a pitcher like Fott, who is in the strike zone more than most pitchers are. He throws first pitch strikes a lot. He hangs out in the strike zone more than most guys. And for that reason, hitters are able to see him the second or third time very easily because they know those pitches are going to be in the zone so much. So I love that he added a cutter this season. He might have even not thrown as many of them had James McCann not encouraged him to do so. I heard a great story about how when James started catching Brandon, he started calling the cutter just because he thought Brandon threw it a lot. He just thought that was a pitch that he threw all the time. And Brandon's like, "Why are you calling for so many cutters?" I just kind of thought that was what you did. Turns out that was probably one of the biggest reasons why he found success with that pitch in the middle portion of this season. So if he continues to develop that east-west movement, he already has a great sinker. So he's got kind of that arm side run. Now, if he can get that cutter to do the same thing, the opposite direction, and then you throw in that sweeper, which has always been a pretty good pitch for him, I think that he's definitely going to have a chance to show improvement in 26.
Yeah, he's a ground ball pitcher for sure.
Yeah, and I think that that could continue.
Yeah. So now on to the relievers in the bullpen. This is the area of the Diamondbacks team that wasn't the strongest, to be honest. They had 29 blown saves and 59% blown saves in MLB, which both are either tied or lead Major League Baseball. And the bullpen, it was a little thin before Puck and Martinez went out, and then you take out two guys that were dominant towards the end of last year, and the bullpen's already thin.
Yeah, I think with the bullpen, obviously they tried to restock it at the trade deadline. Guys like Andrew
Brandon
Hoffman,
Garcia.
Juan Burgos, Brandon Garcia. So they've got a lot of new names. They called up a couple of guys within the system this year. Philip Abner showed up late in the year. Austin Pope very late in the year. Kyle Backus in the middle of the
Yeah.
season. So they have a lot of options moving forward. Now the question is, how many of them do you want to roll with as your regulars? And how many of them can pitch in high leverage situations? Do the Diamondbacks need to go and find a reliever or two who can kind of fit into a back end role while we wait for Puck and Martinez, if in fact we are going to see them in 26 again? Who holds down the ninth inning? Who holds down the eighth inning, the seventh? And can we create some regularity there so that other guys fall into place? Andrew Saalfrank is the name that stands
Yeah.
out to me. I think he was a 1.74 ERA or something like that at the end of his season, through 25 plus innings, I think it was. Obviously missed about a year of baseball because of his
Mm.
suspension, and nobody showed more remorse than him. I think that he felt like he let his teammates down, and the best way for him to make it up to them was to pitch well. And he came out and did that despite missing an opportunity to train with this team for a year. And so, even though, we saw him in 23 in that postseason run and he was great then, missed a lot of time. Now he's back. I think he could play a really big role going into next year. And by the way, we just mentioned a couple of guys. there's a lot of young lefties in this bullpen right now.
Yeah,
Forget
there are.
about Puck for a second because he's to the side. But we mentioned Abner and Backus and Saul Frank and who am I missing? Brandon Garcia. Like there's a lot of lefties in that mix right now going into 26.
Yeah, they have lefties that can get out. The weird thing with the bullpen this year with me was like they don't get me wrong, there was a ton of injuries and props to Mike Hayes and he had to put together guys like Jake Woodford on the fly, but they still had guys like Juan Murillo, Ryan Thompson, Puck before he got hurt, even guys like John Curtis. It wasn't a bad group. I just feel like after one game spiraled, the whole bullpen just kind of blew up.
Yeah, there was a couple guys there who were journeymen, so to speak, that you named, like John Curtis, Jalen Beeks is another one, who, have been around the league. They're maybe pushing 30 years old or early, higher 20s, and they've been tossed around and maybe didn't have a lot of options, but there was opportunity in the desert. And so guys like John Curtis, who I thought was really, really good for the Diamondbacks until his last couple of outings where he had a couple blow-ups
Yeah.
late in the season. That's a guy that I think pitched above his level. Nabil Krismat, while I know he's not technically a part of the bullpen, I guess he was at the end. They picked him up off the street. He barely made any appearances in the minor leagues, and then he comes in and was fantastic in that
Yeah.
fifth spot in the rotation for the end of the year. And I'll kind of throw him in the same mix of, veteran, but also kind of not really major league veteran. And so they got good production at the end of the day. They had some good innings eaters, like you mentioned, Jake Woodford. I know he didn't have the season that he was hoping for or that they were hoping for. But when you consider that they were picking up a lot of these guys off the street, I think they did get some valuable innings from some of those names.
Yeah, my dad kept saying it was a Chris Matt miracle when Bill was good.
I like that. That's interesting. I'll have to steal that if we see Nabil Krismat again next year.
Cool. So if you had to predict, do you think Zach Gallen will return to the Diamondbacks?
There's a lot of factors there. I mean, we talked
Yeah.
about how this is really his first big chance to get a payday and what team is willing to offer him that and in how many years. That's obviously going to play a big role here. He's going to get the qualifying offer from the Diamondbacks, which is 1 year, 21, 22 million, somewhere in that range. He will turn that down so that he can take a multi-year deal, somewhere, whether it's here or elsewhere. It just depends on how much of the Diamondbacks' money they have and how much they want to spend on him. Some rough numbers; these are estimates, but they finished the year somewhere around $180 million
Yeah.
payroll. That number, according to the owner Ken Kendrick and according to the president Derek Hall, that number will come down. We don't know by how much, but they are looking to spend a little bit less next year, just based on revenues and things like that. And so if that number is going to be a little bit lower and they already have commitments, they have a pool of guys who are going to make more in arbitration, so you have to account for that as well. This team might have, anywhere from 30, 40 million dollars to spend in free agency and via trade obviously. In which case, if you have let's say 40 million dollars to spend and Zach Gallen costs you 20, let's just guess, per year, now you're spending half of your available money to upgrade your team on one player. Is that something they're willing to do? Maybe, because they do need starting rotation help. They got 3 spots figured out, but the other 2 they don't. So all of these are questions that are going through the minds of the front office right now as they try to figure out how they want to divvy up those resources heading into 26, whether it's Zach Gallen or somebody else. They got to figure out how much do we want to devote to any one individual player.
So I don't think it will happen, especially with Kendrick going on the radio and saying they're going to cut payroll. The $1 million statement at the start of spring training was you have Merrill Kelly, Corbin Burns, and Zach Gallen, not in that order, but all in that rotation. Do you think it's possible we bring back both Gallen and Kelly, and then we have that same rotation after Burns returns?
I'm not going to say it's impossible. I don't know that it's likely that you bring back both. I mean, I already
Yeah.
kind of painted the picture that it might be difficult to bring back Gallen on his own. Bringing back both, I mean, just rough numbers in my head. What if Gallen costs 20 million a year and Kelly costs 15?
He has
Now all of a
five.
sudden
Yeah.
you've spent all of your money that's available to you in the offseason on just bringing back 2 guys. And really that only takes you back to where you were last year. So um, I don't know that it's likely that both end up back on the Diamondbacks. It's still certainly possible. It's plausible. Um, but I think between the two, Merrill Kelly would probably be easier just because I think that dollar value is going to be a bit lower. He is an older player, so you could sign him to a 1, 2 year deal, and you'd be off that money much sooner than you might with a 4 or longer deal for a guy like Gallen or another pitcher. So is it likely that they're both back? Probably not, but I'd leave the door open for that possibility.
Cool. So let's say I don't get Gallon or Kelly. A couple free agents that I think they would be interested in are Bassett, who had an ERA of 3.96, 170 innings. He's kind of just a pitch to contact dude that rolls double plays and gets strikeouts sometimes.
Yeah, an interesting name, certainly a veteran in this game. I don't know specifics on too many of the pitchers. There's obviously a handful that are really good that are free agents. Merrill Kelly, of course, we kind of talked about a reunion there. That's one that makes sense to me just because he's a guy who grew up in Arizona. He already talked about the possibility of coming back to Arizona even before he was traded to Texas, which is crazy. I could see them, depending on the cost and depending on which spot in the rotation you're trying to fill. Could a guy like Justin Verlander appeal to you? A
That's my
guy who
next question.
he's like 43 years old,
Yeah.
but at the same time, he just pitched at Chase Field this past month and he was spectacular.
Yeah.
There's still some value there depending on how much you're willing to spend on a 43-year-old arm. Is that a route that the Diamondbacks would go? I don't know, but I know that it would be really interesting if you had guys like Verlander, Corbin Burns, and Eduardo Rodriguez roaming the clubhouse each and every day. That's a lot of pitching knowledge, and that would appeal to me. But who knows what they're interested in right now?
Yeah, Verlander is my next question. He showed it in one of the last regular season games where Fott went 9 innings, one hit ball, and Verlander was just as good, one less inning though.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I definitely think that starting pitching is going to be the number one thing that they're looking at. They're trying to find a fourth and a fifth starting pitcher for the rotation, not necessarily in that order, but depending on the value of the players that they add, they could do it in free agency. They could do it via trade and try to find somebody with a little bit of control as well. I know that that's hard to find, but could cost you some decent prospect numbers. But there's guys that are going to be on the market, whether their teams are bad, like a Minnesota, could they look to move Joe Ryan? Or I don't know what another bad team is off the top of my head. Like the Nationals, would they move Mackenzie Gore? I don't know. Maybe if they determine that that's not the route they want to go. Or Pittsburgh, Mitch Keller.
Paul Skeens?
Um,
Just kidding.
no, I don't think they're moving that guy. But those are things they have to look at in this off season. There's other teams too that might just be looking to get off of players because they're heading into free agency. The way that Cleveland got off of Josh Naylor last
Yeah.
off season. Could Cleveland be an organization that does that yet again? They tend to do that with a lot of their players. Could they do it with a guy like Stephen Kwan, who's a left fielder, and the Diamondbacks are going to be without their left fielder for a good chunk of this season? Pete Fairbanks in Tampa Bay comes to mind. Sandy Alcantara in Miami. Like, there's no shortage of names we could throw out of guys that potentially could move at some point.
Yeah. And then on to the bullpen, there's two main guys that I think could really help this team. Carlos Estevez of the Royals, he had a 2.45 ERA in 66 innings with 54 strikeouts. He's about as locked down as it gets in the saves opportunity.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I mean, again, listen, it all depends on how much guys are going to want to get paid. What is their market value? What are other teams willing to pay them? And can the Diamondbacks meet that price? I'm also interested to know, based on how much resources they put into the rotation, what does that leave you for the bullpen? And we talked already about how they added so many bullpen arms at the trade deadline, but those are young guys. How many proven names do they need to go out and get in free agency or via trade? The way that they did with AJ Puck in 2024. I don't know the answer to that yet. And we'll see how they go about building that bullpen for 26.
Nice. And then especially with Locklear hurt, do you think they will uh stick it out with Pavin? Who else is down there? Locklear, Tawa maybe at first, or do you think they'll go sign someone?
I think the best chance is that it's some sort of platoon between Pavin Smith and Tyler Locklear. Again, we'll wait and see when Locklear is available after his surgeries, but there are a lot of options at first base. Tristan English is still in Reno as an option. I guess Tim Tawa and Eldemaro Vargas could, but they were more of a break glass in case of emergency rather than like a traditional first baseman. Um, I suggested on a show earlier this week, I had said, I might look at first base options externally and see what's out there. But it sounds like the reporting that's been done on what the team's direction is, it sounds like they are comfortable with a lot of the options they have in house and they could save a little bit of cash by using what they have at their disposal.
I looked into this a little bit last night. What do you think about the opportunity of a platoon with Paul Goldschmidt and Pavin Smith? Because Smith is a lefty, and Goldschmidt has a 813 OPS against lefties, and Pavin Smith has a 797 OPS against righties.
Yeah, he's a great hitter still against lefties at his exceeding age. The one thing I would say is last year he was a free agent and the Diamondbacks decided to go a different route. Does that mean that they didn't want Goldie? No, it doesn't necessarily mean that. But I tend to think like they had that opportunity last year, and if it didn't happen then, why now? I guess it all depends on what the rest of the market bears. But like I said, all the reporting kind of points in the direction of they like what they have in house, at least for now. And I would expect that they look at using those resources on pitching rather than first base.
Yeah. So around the middle of August, the team that was when we still had everyone that we eventually traded. The team was kind of in a little bit of a slump. They had just dropped 3 out of 4 to the Rockies, and around this time, this Ketel Marte drama kind of swirled up where the team thought he was in Arizona when his house got robbed. He ended up flying back out to the Dominican Republic. What did you think about the Ketel drama? To be honest, I think the media took it way out of context.
Well, the thing that's interesting is that the team dealt with all of this internally when it happened in mid-July. The public didn't deal with it until about a month later when it all got written about and kind of figured out all the pieces of that puzzle. So when it became a big deal in the public eye, it was already no longer a big deal to the team. And
Yeah,
so it was kind of interesting as somebody who is like in the locker room every day and like I'm kind of around those guys, even if I'm not talking to Cattell directly. Like it was interesting to see that happening outside the building when the inside of the building had already internally dealt with all of those issues. So I didn't think it was as big of a deal. Clearly, his teammates stood by him in a time when he was going through a lot. You know, I mean,
yeah.
for anybody to have their house broken into, regardless of where he was at the time that it happened, like that's a tough thing to deal with. And so that on top of all the expectations and just the physical nature of having to play a game of baseball every day, basically, there's already inherent, adversity that comes with that. And so I give Cattell a ton of credit. He played through a lot of the noise that was going on around him externally. I don't think that it impacted the team as nearly as much. I mean, clearly they didn't play well going into the trade deadline, but I think that had more to do with the weight of the trade deadline on their shoulders rather than something external happening with Cattell.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. Are you good if I send you one more?
Yeah, I can do a couple minutes, but
Cool.
you want to ask me that one again?
Yeah, so the team, they were 10 games out of a wild card spot when they traded everyone. They arguably got worse, and the team could have easily caved in, but the Blaze Alexanders, the Lawlers, the Baroses, they all showed progress, and they ended up being in the playoffs until the last game of the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, they were playing meaningful baseball until the last series, really. And I know that, they barely missed out on the ultimate goal, but the fact that they were 8 games under 500 on August 1st and ended the season, 2 or 3 games shy of doing something pretty incredible, which would have been getting to the postseason to begin with. The fact that we were playing meaningful baseball at the end of September and that last homestand really against, teams that were going to be in contention, Philadelphia
Phillies, yeah.
and LA, and then eventually in San Diego, like that environment was crazy to see. It was a playoff atmosphere at Chase Field in those final 2 weeks of the season. And I just want to show a lot of gratitude for what the Diamondbacks were able to accomplish, given the direction that their front office chose to go at the trade deadline, which you can't blame them for based on how the team was playing at the time and the situation they were in. But to get where they were going, it was going to be an uphill battle. It was going to be a miraculous thing, and they came up just short of a miracle.
Yeah. So a couple games that stuck out to me real quick was 17th, 2025 against the Giants. Fought went 1 inning, 9 innings, one hit ball. The offense couldn't get anything going off Justin Verlander. And then in the bottom of the ninth, Corbin Carroll laced a one-out triple. My dad was at that game, and he said it was the loudest triple he's ever heard. Because if they won that, they would have been, I think, 2 games ahead of the Giants, half a game, or they would have been tied for that final wild card spot that night. But then they couldn't get him home. In the 10th, the Giants had a scoreless inning thanks to Brandon Garcia. The Diamondbacks couldn't muster anything again. And then in the 11th, the Giants offense kind of exploded for 5 runs, and then Corbin had a sac fly that gave him one, but they ended up losing that game.
Yeah, I mean, there's a handful of games that I could put, up in that same category of just barely missing out, whether it was against the Dodgers and, obviously they had a miraculous first game against the Dodgers and then the second game had a chance to be another miracle and just barely missed out on that one. Minnesota, you talked about,
Yeah,
San Francisco. Like there's a bunch of games like that. The one that stands out to me throughout the course of the season is the one you already mentioned in Cincinnati, where, in early June, I think it was, where it was raining and they could have won that game. Instead, they had a rain delay. The next day, they lose that game. Gabby got hurt in the rain. Christian Mena got hurt in the rain. They go on to lose that series, get swept. So, like, there's a bunch of games you could put on that pedestal and say, this is the reason why they didn't make the playoffs. I personally don't subscribe to that mentality of like, this is the game or that's the game. For me, it's about the totality of the season. I know that if you look back at the first couple weeks, the team was not pleased with the way that they played defensively.
yeah,
And there's a couple of wins in there probably that eluded them that they would have liked to have added to the ledger. But looking back at it, the reason I highlight that Cincinnati game is not just because Gabby got injured for 9 weeks after that, but also too, it happened against the Reds, who were one of the teams that it came down to at the
yeah.
end, and they won the wild card. And, it would have helped the Diamondbacks if they had a win or two extra against Cincinnati. And maybe that happens if that series doesn't start the way that it did in the rain in June.
Yeah, and then we don't have to explain them, but just a couple injuries that will feed into next year. Corbin Burns, Tommy John, All-Star break is his goal. AJ Puck, Tommy John, Justin Martinez, Tommy John, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., ACL surgery, Christian Montos de Oka, Tommy John, and back surgery, and then Blake Walston, Tommy John.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys that it's going to impact their 2026 seasons. As for timelines, I mean, who knows with some of these guys? Some of them have been vocal about when they'll be back, like Corbin Burns has said the All-Star break. Others we still just don't know. I mean, AJ Puck, he's going to be a free agent after next year, so
Yeah.
if and when he comes back is kind of up in the air. Justin Martinez, same thing. Some of those other guys, they might not even be major leaguers at the time of their injury. Tommy Henry or Blake Walston is the first guy to actually start throwing again. I saw him behind the scenes in that last homestand of the season, so it was good to see him back with the team. But we'll see how this all impacts their next season because there's a lot of guys on that long-term injury list.
Yeah, and the last thing I have for you is five words, and I want you to think who would be that player for the Diamondbacks. So the MVP,
Geraldo Perdomo,
that's what I thought. Yeah, he was incredible this year. Rookie of the year.
Andrew Saalfrank.
Is he still a rookie? I feel like he's been around for a while.
Yeah, but he appeared in 23, but that was just the postseason run.
Yeah,
And
and then he got
so, yeah,
suspended.
technically still a rookie.
Wow. What about most improved?
That would also be Geraldo Perdomo, but for the
Yep,
sake of being different, how about I go with Blaze Alexander?
that's a good answer. And then Gold Gloves, so basically the best defender this year.
Ah, Gold Glove. I might throw Corbin Carroll a bone here. I think that his arm improved to the point where I would say it deserves recognition.
Nice. That's all I have for you. Do you have anything for me?
No, man, I'm just really appreciative that you spend so much time talking about the Diamondbacks. I mean, I know things didn't end exactly the way that the fan base wanted or that
It was
I
fun.
wanted.
I was excited.
Yeah, those last couple weeks were really a thrill, and I'll always take that with me. And just the fact that I got the chance to meet you during this season and have a couple really cool baseball conversations. I appreciate it, man. You keep up the good work, and I'll talk to you anytime.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me take up your whole afternoon on accident.
You bet, man. Anytime.
Cool. One last thing. Is it raining at your house right now that you can tell?
I don't know if it's raining right now, but it was earlier. Yeah.
Because we got nothing all day. It was sunny when I woke up and now it's pouring.
Yeah, not pouring here, but I wouldn't be shocked if it happens.
Cool. Well, thank you again.
All right, man. We'll talk soon. All right, Isaac.
See ya. Enjoy your off season.
Thanks, buddy. See you soon.
See ya.